Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Streamer Thought Podcast, where thoughts flow and ideas stick. It's your host, Jasmine. So today I wanted to talk about what I've been watching lately. So I want to preface this before I get into all the things I've been watching. Um, so I have a degree, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and then I have a master's degree in forensic psychology, and then my PhD will be in general psychology. So, with that being said, I'm really into like the mind, the criminal mind, to be specific. And I always want to know, like, so why were they like that, And like, what happened to them to make them crazy, basically. Like, what happened in your development? Do you have any behavioral issues? And it's not really it's to understand the killer, sure. Um, I'm talking about serial killer specifically, to understand the serial killer, but I also want to understand the up and coming killers, like the ones that have the same habits that the serial killers do, so that you can nip those in the bud before they actually do anything diabolical, something they can't come back from. So, with all of that being said, I was watching a new documentary on Hulu. I do not remember what it was called. I think it was something Hollow Murders. So basically, the guy, he was killing a lot of gay men in like the 70s or 80s, like a long time ago. And he was meeting them in gay clubs and like bringing them home and killing them and like chopping up their bodies and stuff like that. And meanwhile, this man literally had a whole family. He had kids, he had a wife, everything. And he was kind of like rich. He lived in like a really ritzy neighborhood. Um, anyway, I say all that to say, before he could get convicted or anything like that, he ended up killing himself. And so he never did the time for anything that they were not necessarily accusing him of, but thinking that he did. And um, so that's a little synopsis, a short little summary of the serial killer himself. But that wasn't really the part that was the weirdest to me in the show. So after the serial killer died, his wife and his kids moved out of that home and they sold the home, and another man and bought the home with his family. And it was really weird because he was kind of like obsessed with the serial killer. Like, he was going on murder websites and like buying things that used to be in the house, making sure that it was exactly like it was when the serial killer lived there. He wanted to sleep in the same bed the serial killer slept in. He never changed the pool, which they say the serial killer killed the gay men in the pool, or at least some of them, or did things in the pool, and he wanted to keep it exactly the same. So he was a little weird. He was a little strange. Like, why are you obsessed with a serial killer? Um, so that to me was a little iffy. But another thing was, there was a guy who was, I guess, dating the serial killer, but he said he didn't have any parts, but he didn't know what he was doing or nothing like that. But he was, and they could never prove it, but he was just so suspect because he was dating him for like, well, actually, first he was the one that told the police that he was a killer. And he was basically like, I'm pretty sure he's the killer, but I got away. You know, I escaped, or he let me go. And eventually the police were like, well, why, if he killed every single one of these other gay guys, why would he let you go? Come to find out, that was his boyfriend. So not only did he lie about just never seeing him past that night, but he was literally dating him even after that. So he wanted to go back to the house, what he felt like was like a sentimental piece of him. So he would go back to the house and like tell the story. I think he just wanted clout. Like, he definitely wanted some attention, and he was getting it. But everything he did was just suspicious, and he just kept saying, even if they didn't ask him, he would say, I had nothing to do with this. I never killed anyone. So yeah, like I said, they never could prove that he did it or that he was involved in it. And the actual serial killer was dead, so like he's still out. But that documentary was just interesting, and it just made me think, like, people are so strange. Like people are strange in different ways, and I just don't understand why you would, if if you didn't think that this person, if you thought this person was dangerous, why would you continue to be around them? Like he said that he almost killed him by like choking him. It was like an erotic fantasy or whatever, but it was like borderline, like you are choking me too hard, like I could die type of thing. And then you kept seeing him for 2 years. So it just makes you wonder about people's brains and psyche, hence why I'm getting my PhD in general psychology. So just a side note, well, not even a side note, a whole different topic. I was scrolling on YouTube one day, and which is something that I do commonly, just to see like what podcasts are on there or what are people talking about, whatever. And something that came up in the like you might be interested or keep watching section was about the headline, or the title literally said, "What did slaves eat?" And I was like, "Ooh, what did they eat?" And so I clicked on it because it was intriguing. And basically, I mean, it confirmed first that slaves definitely ate whatever the slave owners didn't want. So they had the leftovers. But also, all the good seasonings and all the good flavors come from the slaves. So you think about things like oxtails, like the slave owner didn't want oxtails. And mind you, I do not eat oxtails. I only ate them once in my entire life thus far, I believe. But like, they didn't want that. They thought it was just like meat that you shouldn't eat, so they gave it to the slaves. But the slaves would season them oxtails and put them in stews and just do all this good stuff to it. And now oxtails are very expensive. So it's like a luxury. So I think that's kind of funny as well. Or not even just oxtails, like pig's feet or chitterlings, chitlins, which I used to eat as a kid, but I don't eat them anymore. So that's another thing that I thought about. I was like, girl, maybe you bougie because like you don't eat none of this stuff, and literally the slaves ate it. You are eating history, so you should probably try some more chitterlings and some more oxtails and some more pig's feet. But also, I don't think they live very long because that is a very unhealthy diet to have. Like you seasoning stuff like crazy, and then you eating all the extra meats that nobody else wants. I feel like that's probably not good. That's why a lot of people have high blood pressure, diabetes, all these other issues, because they're still eating that kind of food on a daily basis. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I do think it was a good history lesson to have, to know that, hey, all this good soul food, the slaves started it. And so, yeah, that was a cool documentary or just a little YouTube video, a history lesson. Another one that I found was about the real Uncle Tom. So his name was actually not Tom at all. It was Josiah Henson. So Josiah Henson was a slave, of course. Well, before I get into who he was, Uncle Tom, and people use that phrase a lot because it's like it's it's negative, and it's like you're pandering to white people if you're Uncle Tom. So it had a negative connotation, but Josiah Henson, the real story of Josiah Henson, yes, he did some things to where he did pander to his masters, and there was one instance where he was told to take slaves. Well, before all that, he was an overseer of the slaves in the yard, and so that was kind of like nobody really liked that because he was also a slave and he was overseeing them. But another thing is, master, I guess, trusted him enough, as much as you can trust a slave, I guess, to take other slaves to another state so they could be sold. So he agreed to do that, and on the way to whatever state it was, I don't forget that state, they had to go, I don't remember that state, but they had to go through Ohio, which was a free state. And so the slaves asked him, hey, this is a free state. Can't we just stay here and just not be slaves? Why do we have to go to that other state and be sold? And Josiah did not let them do that. He said, I'm going to do what, the slave owner told me to do, and you're going to go over there and be sold. Which, like you could have just let the people go, right? And your people, but your loyalty was to your master. So I get that. That was messed up. That was really messed up. And later on, he did realize that that was messed up. But yeah, eventually, when he escaped himself, he escaped with his family. They went to like Canada or something, which was free. And then he helped with the Underground Railroad to get the slaves, to help the slaves out so they could also be free. So he turned it around. And I think that a lot of people don't know the whole story. And so they just use Uncle Tom as a negative connotation. But the words Uncle Tom didn't come from him at all. He wrote a biography, and then later on, Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin based off of his biography. So she made that up, but that wasn't really his name. So I thought that was interesting because I never knew who Josiah Henson was. And I never really knew the true story of Uncle Tom. So I I think that when people say that, like sure, you could be partially right, but also you should be willing to learn your whole history and know like what that really means, and that it's deeper than that. So yeah, I thought that was really informative. Another video that I saw on YouTube was about desegregation. So it was literally a man interviewing kids and families about how they feel about desegregation. Like now the white kids got to go to school with the black kids and vice versa. So in the beginning, the guy was interviewing a little white girl and her mom, and he was kind of like suggesting, like, "Hey, how do you feel about this new school?" And like they were giving him answers that didn't really, I guess, satisfy him. So he would keep asking, and then the mom was eventually like, "You mean like us having to be with Negroes?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean." And she was like, "I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind. She doesn't mind. Like it's fine, you know." So they were fine with it. And so, like I said, he was interviewing white kids, black kids, parents, and then eventually towards the end, he got to this little white girl, and he asked her, "So how? When do you think this school will become your school and not just a school that you go to?" And she was like, "It's my school now. I go to the school now. I'm enrolled in this school. This is my school." And mind you, her parents weren't there. So I was thinking like either her parents were, progressive in the way that it didn't matter to them, like segregation was totally fine. And so they just sent her to school. It's like, "You're going to school. It's fine. Go to school." Um, so yeah, I'm going more towards that alternative because it makes the most sense with her answer, because she was more like looking at him like he was crazy, like, "What do you mean, and what kind of question is that to ask me? This is my school now." And he didn't seem too satisfied with that answer, and he was just like, "Oh, okay." So that really just showed me that something I knew, but it just solidified it. Like racism is taught. If you Because kids don't know. Kids don't know the difference unless you tell them the difference. So if your parents tell you, "Hey, don't play with that white kid, don't play with that black kid, don't do that. These are Negroes or these are crackers or whatever." If they tell you that, then that's what you're gonna do. But if they tell you that people are just people, there are good people of all colors and there are bad people of all colors, then you're gonna go in through your life with that same attitude. So I just thought that all of those things are just so important. I was going down, and I tend to do this a lot, rabbit holes. That's what I do. I see one thing, and then I see another thing, and then I'm just in like a whole like spiral of like these videos. And so on that day, that's what I was doing. But yeah, so that just sums up, my rambles for this week. I thank you guys for watching, and this podcast will be available on all podcast platforms, the audio, but the video will only be on YouTube. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and see you next time.